Oh, well, here we go again. Bloody YouTube, and I blame YouTube. I seriously do, because their streaming service is utter garbage. Their streaming software. How do I do this? All right. Let's move this down here. Hello. Hello. I can see chat now. Thank you, James Penny. Hello, Tony. Hello. Divergent Railways. How's it going? Glad everyone was able to jump ship. Hello, Albert. All right, everyone's finding it. I'm just going to update the link in my bio so that if anyone joins, they'll join the new stream and not me. Hold on. Okay. Picture isn't working. Can anyone else confirm if the picture is working? Okay. All right, it's all working for everyone else, so looks like it's on you, Tony. Yeah, I can't help the res. Looks like some people's getting, Divergent Railway's getting 720. The res looks okay on my end, at least up to normal standards. I know it isn't fantastic on normal standards, but I try. Okay. Tony's back. How's it this time? Okay, I was getting 720. All right, well, I will get on to the topic. So, great to hear. So, the topic tonight is the ethics of urbexing, and I want to discuss all aspects of urbexing, all the way from the act in itself to the ethics of what you do while urbexing. All right, so we'll start with urbexing in itself, the act of urbexing. We all know that it's illegal, or at the very least a grey area of the law. Different people I've spoken to have said different things about the exact legalities of it. I'm talking about here in Victoria, Australia, really, more than anything. But exactly how consistent these rules are, I'm not sure in terms of across the world and whatnot. I have had a couple of friends be charged with trespassing before. Now, one of them, his case all happened before I got into urbexing, but he said that basically it all worked out that he just needed to pay a $50 donation to the RSPCA and it was all good. My other mate who got charged with trespassing since I've started urbexing, he was going to go to court, but then the charges were dropped. So, yeah. Generally, I mean, I've been caught many times while urbexing. I think my record was 4 times in 1 week while I was on a road trip, an urbex-themed road trip. We were just hitting up so many places, and we were in there for such lengths of time that we got caught and we got off every time. My sort of policy, if you like, in terms of getting caught and what do you call it? Like, yeah, just what do I do when I'm about to get caught, or I know I'm going to get caught, or something like that. I never run away. That's the worst thing you can really do, in my opinion, because most people, if you're not causing any destruction or anything like that, most people will be perfectly fine with what you're doing, or not necessarily perfectly fine, but they'll let you get away with it at the very least. As long as you go up to them and you explain what you're doing and your motives for being there. If you run away, it makes you look instantly guilty. And that's the main reason why I don't like to run away. I've been caught by security at some of the places. I was exploring an old house once, and the owner rocked up. And, you'd think that'd be quite confronting, and it was. But once we explained what we were doing and stuff, we had a good chat, and we found out a lot of interesting history about that house, such as it was actually technically their mum's house, but their mum was like 110 or something like that, something ridiculous. And I don't think I'm exaggerating there. And they were in an aged care place in a nearby town. And yeah, there was the daughter that caught us, and she was like in her late 60s. So yeah. And yeah, just explained the history of the house and stuff like that, and it was a good time. So Divergent Rower says, Urbex is a gamble, obviously. However, it all depends on the area's history with explorers, taggers, or vandals. Yes, that's very true. Jesse Matthews says, they get funny at rower yards these days. Yes, and I guess I can talk about rail yards a bit as well. JB says, I think it really depends on the place you're exploring. Absolutely. Places like military bases would probably have higher fines / charges than some random house. Yes, that's very true. A person whose house it is, as long as obviously you didn't cause any damage or destruction or anything like that, it's probably really not worth their time and money to charge you with anything. So yeah, but larger places, yes, for sure, you are taking more of a risk at larger places. Jesse, Divergent Row says, Jesse, Summerton in particular, I don't go anywhere near the line because some just ruin it for everyone. Yes, absolutely. Running away, says Abraham, is the worst thing you can do, because then you'll get caught and fined. It's better to confront security guards friendly. Yes, absolutely. And people might not come across as friendly, like in terms of security or authority. They might not come across as friendly at first, but as long as you stay calm and you explain yourself, they'll generally let you off the hook. So I guess let's just say urbexing is illegal flat out for now. Obviously, I still do it, and many other people do it, and it's I get some people who are not in the community and stuff I do get some people who say, well, if it's illegal, why do you do it? And I say, because I don't have a problem ethically with it. I get some people saying, like, oh, but you wouldn't want people coming in if it was your house. And I always say to them, like, if I was still living at that house, yes, I would not be happy with people coming by. But if it was an abandoned house, as long as they weren't doing anything to damage it, they weren't going to give away the location to potential vandals, then I would be totally okay with it if my house was abandoned. But, yeah, I see it as, and I guess what's hard for them to understand is how you can, they don't get how you can tell that a house is abandoned. They don't get like it might be obvious if all the windows are broken and it's covered in graffiti already, but what about an untouched house? Especially if you're out in the country, it can be hard to distinguish between a house that's just really run down and a house that's actually abandoned. And that's something you just get more experience with over time, and there's lots of little things you can look for. I can do a live stream another time on how I find my abandoned places. And yeah, sometimes it's not necessarily one thing, but it's lots of little things. Like, the grass is long, the house is pretty dirty, can't see any cars, letterbox is overflowing. That sort of things. Like, if just one of them was the case, I probably wouldn't say it's abandoned. But if all of them are there together, then yeah. Abraham says it's good to document places before they get demolished. Yes, absolutely, and that's part of what I love about urbexing. Divergent says urbexing with a camera, I reckon, would get people off easy because of the videographic evidence of being there in case vandalism did occur. Yes, absolutely, and the fact that you've got a camera, like, okay, so if you just go there with your phone to take photos, it can be less obvious, even if you were legitimately there just to take photos. It can definitely be harder to convince people of that fact, even if you've got nothing else on you. But if you've got a big camera, then yeah, it's a lot easier to convince people that that's what you were doing. And yeah, you always say, like, no, I don't vandalize, I don't like vandalism, all that sort of stuff. And yeah. So in terms of just the act of urbexing itself, I really don't see any problem with it, and I think pretty much everyone here will agree that there's no real problem ethically with just entering an abandoned building. Not much beyond that. I mean, there's many people will be old Foggy Avenue fans, and you'd remember our old saying that take only photos, leave only footprints, and break nothing but the silence. And that's a great general rule to go by. Tony says, I have usually found that if you have a camera in your hand, people are usually more receptive. Yes. Jesse says, I remember when I used to go to photograph Dine and Local Depot, I would ask at the site office. They always said yes and gave me common sense. talk. That was back in the early 90s. Yes, and I don't think you'd get the same response now. Unless you really knew someone who could get you. I do know of people who've sort of been able to ask at Dynon, but they've known people there beforehand, and yeah, they obviously have to wear a high vis and stuff. Divergences, any opinions on farmlands, as in urbexing on farmlands, or what? I don't quite get what you mean. So I guess I'll talk about the ethics. Okay, so yeah, you mean so urbexing farmlands? Well, I view it as like urbexing any abandoned houses. The only difference can be that you could have an abandoned homestead within a very much active farm, and I've done a few of them. I've even been caught on one of them. I can tell you where it is because it's been demolished now. Very interesting house in a small town called Antwerp in Western Victoria. A house that was the site of Victoria's first and only case of a death by exorcism. So it was a rather creepy house, as you can imagine, but yes, I was caught by the farmer there, and he was rather sick of people coming in. We apologised, and that's the good thing, is if the person who catches you seems really annoyed and they seem like they're really not calming down, then you just say, look, I'm sorry, we'll leave. So you offer the solution. That can be good. So you offer the solution, you say, sorry, we'll leave. And that way they don't have to feel like they need to come up with a solution which is like literally kicking you out, which, I mean, they're going to do it anyway. Or most of the time they'll kick you out, but not always. I've been caught and then been told I can stay on. Or in worst case scenario, they call the police or something like that. So Doven said, if there's a photo you'd like to get, but it's only good on the farmland. Oh, in terms of like trespassing on the farmland for like train photography and stuff. Look, again, I don't see any ethical. I don't think I wouldn't see anything ethically wrong with that, but just be prepared that you are taking that risk because it's an active farmland and the farmer could well come and they might not be very happy with you. And it is a little bit more like walking into someone's home. I'd just say use your best judgment in that scenario. Have homeless people threatened me, says Abraham? Not directly. I've definitely encountered a couple of homeless people, but usually either they're totally cool with you or they're not, and in which case you just say, oh, look, sorry, didn't mean to disturb you, we'll leave, or we'll move to another part of the building. Is mild trespass an inherent part of Urbex culture? Yes, it is, but sort of only because it's necessary. I don't think that there's too many people who are in the hobby for the act of trespassing. There would be some people. There's always going to be some people who are in it for the thrill and, oh, it's illegal and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, yeah, I think that most people are there for the abandoned aspect of it, and trespassing just so happens to be a necessary part of that, if you like. So I hope that answered your question. Not the act as such, but in the sense of pushing boundaries. Well, again, it's like there are some people that would be in it for the seeing, like, how far can I get away with, and that sort of thing. But I think the majority of people are just there for the building, really. I guess while I think of it, a flavour of Urbex that I don't tend to get involved with much is rooftoping and exploring, like, buildings like skyscrapers in the CBD that are under construction. Some people I know like to do that, and I guess I'll throw the city loop, walking the city loop, as part of that. I don't get involved with that sort of thing anymore, but I think you'll find that a lot of those people who do it are more into it for pushing the boundaries and that sort of thing. But they're into it. I think most people are always into it for the place. And I think that if in some magical world it was completely 100% legal, I think they'd still do it. And they'd still get pretty much equal enjoyment out of it. Diversion says, what I'm trying to balance is avoiding two things at once: farmland trespassing and railway trespassing. That's why I called for the farm, and so therefore I don't cause disruption. Yes, look, that's really, it's hard to give a sort of one-size-fits-all answer for that sort of thing, because in some cases I would say the farmland's better, and in other cases I'd say the rail corridor is better. I'd say it depends on how close you are to the tracks. Your main goal is just to stay far away from the tracks. And as long as you're that, if you can be within the rail corridor yet still a decent away from the tracks, just so that there's absolutely no doubt in any passing train drivers' minds that you're there for the wrong reasons, then yeah. And I think that I would always go the railway line in preference to the farmland, but if it's so meant that by not going in the farmland I would be too close to the tracks, then in that case I would go to farmland. JB says drones are great for that sort of stuff. Yeah, drones can be good. Tony says, yes, I've run into with my drone than physically going in myself. All right. Jesse says, the farmers I know would be very upset. I'm not sure what you mean. So, the ethics, I want to now talk about the ethics of what you do while urbexing. So, we're assuming that it's now completely ethical to enter the building wherever you're going, but now you want to, now that you're in there, what is and isn't ethical? Spray painting. I personally really don't like to do spray painting at all. I really don't like the idea of spray painting at all. I get asked, like, oh, what about a place like Nilex or Bradmill that's, you know, already covered in spray paint? What about that? I would be, that sort of thing, I'm less annoyed. If I see, like, I've run into people spray painting in, like, Bradmill and stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Not something I would personally do, but don't have a huge problem with it at the same time. Somewhere like Nilex, well, I saw Nilex go through the phases of being not that trashed. I don't think I ever got there where it was truly untouched. I got there when it was pretty untouched, but yeah, I saw it go through mostly untouched all the way to completely trashed. And basically, I'd rather it stay reasonably untouched to begin with. Yeah. And so, yeah. What about mild tagging, like, say if you had a marker and you just wrote your name in a place that's already trashed and such? Again, not something I would do. If it's already pretty trashed, I'm not going to have a huge issue with it. Like if say I'm out with a friend and I've got a couple of friends who would not trash, but they would just sort of put their name in a building that's already pretty trashed, but they would never want to do it in a place that's untouched. And to that I go, like, I'd rather just not do it at all, because I just feel like any act, no matter how small, any act of vandalism, no matter how small, it all sort of contributes. And, you know, like, if 100 people all thought, oh, you know, it's only a little name and it's already trashed, then that does make a big difference. And yeah, that's why I'm not really for it, but I'm not going to have a huge problem with it if one of my friends does it. Whereas, you know, if they did the same thing in an untouched place, then yeah, I'd be pretty annoyed and I'd probably have a go at them for it. In buildings like Bradmill, really professional stuff like the pieces are cool, the tags are just ugly and annoying. Yeah, that's a good point. I can definitely appreciate the more higher quality stuff. I feel like the rules should be relaxed for tagging in certain places. I would like more, basically I'd like more places that can legally be tagged without needing a permit. Yeah. Because I think street art in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, and yes, you absolutely can get some really high quality artwork that's actually artwork, but you can also get the scrap that's just, I scribbled my name because I want to get my name out there. Why? Because I just do. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of that. If you've bought pens, paints, etc., does that not say something about your intentions for being there? Yes, absolutely it does. And that's another reason why I don't like to do that. Diversion says the culture affects the spray paint idea. If it's just a territory mark, it's lazy and trash, but an artist's work could be better. Yes, absolutely. And I have spoken to a bunch of people all the way from, you know, high quality spray paint artists all the way down to I'm just marking my territory. And for sure, I've got a lot more respect for the actual artists than the I'm marking my territory sort of thing. Tony says, yeah, the problem is once a place becomes well known, it gets trashed. Yes, absolutely, and that's why I like to keep places on the down low. I'll talk a little bit later on in the live stream about my sort of ideas behind how much you should give away locations. What's my thoughts, says Abraham, on Psalm and his tagging? Again, it's just tagging for the notoriety. And there's a lot of copycats out there as well. And I've got no real respect. Same with something like Cinch. You know, Cinch, for those of you who don't know, was a big name in the graffiti world. And he died in 2014 when he decided to strip naked and get on top of a train and was electrocuted. Died at Ripponlea Station, I think. So, death by Domina Water, I guess. And so, yeah. Yeah, I think I've covered everything I want to cover in terms of tagging and vandalism. For that matter, smashing of windows and stuff, there's pretty much never a spot that I'm okay with that at all. Even a place like Bradmill or something like that, like if a friend starts breaking glass, depending on how close of a friend they are, I could well start calling them out for it. Yeah. I hate that sort of stuff. Nost and pork, there's some big tags around the city itself as well. Yeah, absolutely. And again, lots of copycats. Yeah. In terms of taking stuff, now here's where it gets a little bit more grey. Of course, as a general rule, I don't like taking stuff. Have I ever taken stuff from an abandoned building? Yes, I have. I've taken a few things over the years, and I've been okay with that. When do I think it's okay to take stuff? And when do I count it as, from an ethical perspective, stealing? It really depends on how trashed the place is and how quickly I think it will get trashed / demolished. So if I go to a really untouched farmhouse that's been sitting there for years, there's heaps of shit everywhere. I've been to places where I've been like, there's some stuff which I've been like, oh my God, that's like so cool. I wish I could take that, but I'm going to respect the owner in this case and leave it. On the other hand, I've been to some places where I've been like, look, it's untouched now, but I know that within a matter of weeks or months, it's going to be super trashed, and there's a serious risk of this thing being destroyed, and I would like to take it for preservation purposes, basically. That's when I think it's okay. I don't think it's ever okay to take something for the idea of profit. I've come across plenty of things where I've thought like, oh shit, if I was if I ethically had no boundaries, then I could make a lot of money off this stuff. But of course, I do have boundaries, and I leave that stuff behind. Unless I have a want for it myself, I don't take it ever. Sometimes or the only exception to that rule would be like, let's say I knew that a friend collected something, then I would take it for them, but never, ever, ever take for profit. The strangest thing I've probably taken from an abandoned building was the handle to, it was like the flushing handle of a toilet. And you're thinking, what was so special about this toilet? Why did you feel the need to take the handle specifically? Well, it just so happened that the handle on my toilet at home was broken. I don't know how it broke, but it did. And it's like an old 50s toilet, and I don't know, you'd never be able to find the spare part, but except for I just happened to be coming across a house that was about to be demolished, and they had this specific toilet handle, and I was like, well, I'll take that, thanks very much. And so yeah, it's seen good use and it's still on the toilet today. So preservation, says Jesse, he's taken a few things in my time. Yeah, again, I say use your best judgment. If you think that it's at serious risk of being lost or destroyed, then in that case, I think it's okay to take something. Occasionally, if you could preserve something for, like if you found something of railway nature, for example, that you wanted to eventually hand over to some sort of museum, I'd be okay with taking that. I guess a more direct example of that would be, like, I know that you can find bits of the Southern Aurora wreckage around Violet Town if you know what to look for and where. I haven't personally taken anything, but I do know of a guy who he plans to get a museum up and going for the Southern Aurora rail disaster, and yeah, so he's taken a bit of wreckage and stuff, and again, it's like, well, it's not necessarily for himself, but it's for the future museum. So I think that's good. Better than going to a skip, though. I love justifying my misdeeds. Yeah, but that's exactly right. That's what preservation is all about. It's taking something when it would otherwise have gone to the scrap heap. Abraham says, the strangest thing I took was a chair from an abandoned RSL when it was getting demolished. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Reminds me of the old Beaumaris RSL that was demolished a few years ago. I loved that place. That was pretty cool. A copper sign from the 20s is different to copper wire from the factory walls. It's an interesting grey area. Yes, absolutely. And again, it's the preservation aspect of your trying to preserve it because it would otherwise go in the scrap heap. And generally speaking, if you're taking copper wire, then you're going to sell that copper wire. So again, that's where that's where you draw the line of, okay, well, in the example of the 20 years sign, you're preserving that, but yeah, not necessarily the copper wire. I mean, I guess there might be some case somewhere where a piece of copper wire was particularly historic for some reason. If you were there to preserve it legitimately and not make a profit out of it, then I'll be okay with that. Yeah, and it can be, you also have to make a judgment call of like, how likely are you going to get caught with this stuff with you? And will you be able to justify that? Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any time when I've specifically taken something and been caught with it. But yeah, I guess if you're caught, I would, again, fess up to it, because it's better that you fess up to it than you be found with it, because your story of wanting to preserve it is going to be a lot more believable then, and I guess you have to offer to put it back. And just, you explain, say, hey, I collect this or that, and I took this because I thought it was in danger of getting lost or destroyed. Can I keep it? No worries. If not, I'll put it back. That sort of thing. Yeah. Now, the ethics of, I guess we'll talk about the ethics of trespassing in terms of railways, while we're on the topic of trespassing and that sort of thing. Well, before I do that, I'll just read what Albert said. Depends on the object. I don't think anyone would have a problem with you taking the toilet handle. Yeah, you're right. But even so, like, if I was caught at the thing, I would fess up and say, hey, look, I know it's just a toilet handle, but I just want to let you know I did take it. Are you okay with it? And you're pretty much guaranteed that they'll say yes if they're a reasonable person, and the house is going to be demolished and stuff. But yeah. So yeah, trespassing on, if we're talking about the ethics of trespassing, I'm talking about the ethics of trespassing in terms of railway land and that sort of thing. I think number one, you have to use common sense, and I mean that goes without saying, hopefully, but you always want to be sure that not only are you being safe, but there's no doubt in anyone else's minds that you're being safe. And to a certain extent, like, there are some people who, like, for example, I was in Tokemore once, and there was a train in the loop and a train in the platform that was the passenger train that I was on, and I knew nothing was moving because the locos had run around and everything was shut down. But then somebody still had to go at me for crossing the tracks at not a dedicated level crossing, and I was just like, really? You're going to have a go at me for that? No trains are going to come. I'm not at risk of anything. Shut up. Yeah. If you do know that a train is coming, like a heritage train for that sort of thing, Going back to the talk about farmland and road corridors and that sort of thing, as long as you're staying well clear, and I mean well clear of the tracks, not just I am clear, but it might not be obvious from afar, but I mean like as soon as anyone sees you, if any driver sees you on the train, they're going to be sure that you're not going to move and you're not going to cause them any potential issues. Active yards, abandoned yards, that sort of thing. It depends on the yard. I wouldn't take the risk with something like Dynon, probably. I have taken the risk in Tottenham before. I've been into Tottenham. I was just very careful not to be seen. That was my thing. Yeah. Abandoned yards, just stay clear of any active areas. I've been into some active yards like North Geelong, but it was on like a Sunday. Okay, it wasn't North Geelong, it was Main Geelong, yeah. Or like where the turntable is, the Geelong turntable. That's where I went. And it was a Sunday and nobody was there, and yeah, it was fine. Probably a different story on a weekday. What about somewhere like Steamrail or some sort of preservation group? Again, just watch out because they are active. And I think you'll find with those places, if you just head to the office or you find somebody and you just ask, hey, can I have a look around? They'll say yes. So it's probably worth it just to ask. I guess with the topic of urbexing and all that, I do. Some people say to me like, "Oh, you know, why don't you try and get permission to enter these buildings?" And I go like, "Yeah, I would if it was easy, but a lot of the time, even if I'd love to get permission, there's just no information out there on who to contact. So." And even if it's something like an abandoned school and you know that, you know, the person to contact would be the education department, good luck trying to get onto them. So in a lot of cases, it's just a lot easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So I do use that rule quite liberally. So platforms are better to explore if they're on double sides rather than on platforms. Yeah, and again, if you're like trying to photograph a heritage train or any train for that matter, and you want to photograph it from the grounds of an abandoned station, or a closed station, or a closed platform on an active station, I think it's okay. You just need to stand well clear. Yeah. Active platforms, just stay behind the yellow line. Not because, you know, like I'm sure you could get a little bit closer and still be okay, but the yellow line is good because then it's a good indicator from afar for the train crew that you're being respectful to boundaries and they just don't have anything to worry about. You just want to assert confidence that there's nothing for people to worry about. Yeah, even if you might know that you yourself are safe, if it might potentially cause others to question it, then maybe take some extra steps to just appear a bit more safe. Have any owners to abandoned buildings you have posted commented on any of your posts? Yes, in the old Fogarty Avenue days, we had a couple of owners. Some were respectful and going like, oh, you know, well, you didn't vandalise, you didn't do anything like that, and hey, you know, I'm glad you documented it. And others have been quite annoyed and have wanted to take the video down, and that's a tough one. I evaluate it on a case-by-case scenario. I've had some places where I've gone like, okay, fair enough, I'll take it down. And in other cases, I've gone, sorry, I don't think your argument is very good. I'm going to leave the video up. Two examples of that, the Healesville line, walking the Healesville line, those videos, we took them down because we were contacted by the Healesville Railway and they said, yeah, we'd like you to take it down because, you know, we don't want people walking our line. And they sounded quite annoyed, and I was like, okay, fine. But another example, similar but very different outcome, was the Mornington Line. We walked the Mornington Line, and the result of that was one of the guys from there, Arthur, he was like, oh, you guys seem really intrigued. How about you come back on a running day and I'll give you a full yard tour and you can have a free ride on the train as well. So I was like, sounds good. And yeah, Healesville were also annoyed because we did run into the high rail car and yeah, they weren't too happy about that. So that probably contributed. Oh, and I guess an example of where I've been asked to take something down and I've left it up. The Hamilton, I think it was Hamilton wool bales or something like that. We were contacted by the current owners. They weren't the owners when the video was filmed, but they are now, and they've since done it up. They've said, oh, they went, you know, take it down, it's bad for our image and stuff, and we're like, no, sorry. So we left it up. Gigi Mac, or whatever his name is, have you ever been to the abandoned power plant relay building from the disused electrified Gippsland line in Druin? Substation is the correct name for that sort of thing. No, I haven't. That's on my list, though, is all the substations of the old electrified Gippsland line. Albert says the problem is once you get permission, they are liable for anything that happens to you, so getting permission can be difficult. Abandoned buildings no longer have public liability insurance. Yes, absolutely. And that's why it can be. I've had people get permission, but it's sort of an informal permission where you know someone and they sort of say, look, I'm happy for you to have a look around and stuff, but if anyone asks, I didn't know you were here, sort of thing. yeah, even in railways, like I told on my last live stream the story of Arjen Railway Yard, where I was was given informal permission to walk around an active rail yard. Yeah. G'day, Sammy. How's it going? So yeah, Divergent says, might I just say that with the crossing of the tracks deal, even if you are aware of what is coming, it's not an easy way out. Just ensure you check any signals, since Australia, most info is private. Oh yeah, cool. Licky says hi. Okay, Licky. Yes, for sure. Crossing with the tracks, use common sense. I actually, one night, I camped out near Little River and with a mate, and we saw a bunch of trains go past during the night. Obviously crossed the tracks a few times, and we even climbed a few signal gantries and stuff. And yeah, we just made sure that we were relatively hidden. And yeah, there's been one, I'll talk about this one time where I was in Ararat and I stood well clear of the tracks. I did a similar thing in Albury as well. So I stood well clear of the tracks, and then the locomotives sort of passed by and I was standing well clear, and then once the locomotives were sort of out of sight, but the train itself was still passing me, then I got a lot closer. And, you know, I've had people have a go at me for that and saying like, oh, you know, you can get stuff flicked up at you and blah, 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 blah. Use your common sense and, you know, don't be an idiot. If you get hurt when you're being stupid, that's your fault. Even if you could technically win in a court of law. Have I been to the abandoned Cancer Council building? No, I haven't. It's another one that's been on my list for a while. Oh, Gerard. Your old French teacher is glad to see that you're keeping safe in your explorations. I didn't recognize your username, Gerard, but yes, I must visit you sometime, and I'll bring James and Luke along, and we can share stories of the Frankston line. Glad that you found my YouTube channel. Yes. Can I think of any other stories and that sort of thing? It's coming up on an hour. I guess I mentioned earlier in the stream about getting caught 4 times in 1 week. I'll briefly tell the stories of each of those 4 times. The first time we got caught, we were exploring an abandoned primary school and the power was still on. I even managed to get a couple of the computers running. Yes, the ethics of location mapping. Okay, I'll finish the stories and then I'll go into that. So, yeah, we've got a few computers running, blah, blah, blah. We'd parked our car outside the place, which is another thing I actually do like to do in most places. I like to park outside because it's another thing that shows, like, I'm not trying to hide anything. But we were in a van, and that looked a little sus that we were, going to take stuff and whatever. So the caretaker who lived next door came around and said, like, what are you doing? Turns out it just so happened that it was at the end of our explore. So we were almost done, and they found us, and we explained what we were doing and stuff, and they were like, oh yeah, no worries in the end. We said, oh, look, there is an open window, just so you know, that, actual burglars could potentially get in. And we were just like, and so we told her that, and she was like, oh, thanks for that. Look, I'm going to have to call the police about that, but don't worry, I'm not going to mention you or anything. Are you done? Because I want to make sure you're out of here before the police get here. And we were like, I said, oh, look, can I just have another 5 minutes just to finish things up? She said, yep, no worries. 5 minutes, and I'll call the police in like 10 or something. So we're like, yep, cool. We got out of there. Nice lady. And that can be a little tip for primary schools, is often the caretaker is the person who lives next door. So you might be able to knock on their door and say, explain what you're doing and that sort of thing. And maybe you can get in. Can't really remember the second time, but we got away. Third time, we were caught by security guard, and he was a bit annoyed at first. We ended up making a compromise with him and saying that, he was like, look, take a photo of your license and I'll call the police if you ever turn up again, but you're fine if you don't turn up again. So I was like, all right, fine. So yeah. Fourth time, it was again another primary school, ran to the owner. It was just like, oh, sorry, and we'll leave. The third time was that getting caught at the Antwerp house, and the farmer was a bit annoyed and we left. So, finish things off, the ethics of location blabbing. Before that was Jessie saying, I train hopped to Adelaide once and got caught in a freight wagon, a stern talking to, then offer of a ride in the cab. Lucky. Very interesting. How recent was that? Was it? So if it was a few years ago, as I might expect, then I think you might get a different response these days. The ethics of location blabbing. Again, as with taking the stuff, there's no one size fits all. 1998, there you go. Yeah, I think you'd have a different story today. And there's no one size fits all with location blabbing. There's really, it's just like, if it's completely untouched, then I will try to hide all mention, anything that could be traced back to where it is. So just make sure there's no signs or letters or anything. It can often be very time consuming. Sometimes it's too time consuming, and so I will simply wait for something to happen to that place before I publish that video. Because once it's demolished, then there's no negative effects of location blabbing. But somewhere like Nilex, where or Bradmill, where, you know, I'm literally saying the name of the place. And with a bit of Google searching, it's quite easy to find where they are. I tend not to ever mention the address directly, but it's sort of like a, you know where it is type thing. And I'll even say the suburb, like, you know, Nilex is in Richmond or Cremorne, and Bradmill's in Yarraville. But I will always I'll always try to, I will never say the address directly. In a case like Bradmill or Nilex, where it's already a bit trashed, I'm hiding it. I'm not going to be too worried. By saying the name, I'm not going to be too worried about it getting more trashed, because it's sort of just going to happen anyway, whether or not I do it. Yeah. And it's just ultimately your judgment call. I think that Jay Boston is an old offender that has good intentions, but just can never really get the idea right with censoring places. Yeah. And it's well known that him and I have clashed a bit over that, but we're still friends. We'll still go exploring together. I've been asked before about showing the entrances to places. Again, it depends on the place. If it's somewhere like Nilex or Bradmill, I really couldn't care less about showing the entrance. But if it's a more untouched place, then it's sort of like, well, if you know where it is, if you found where it is, despite all the covering up I've done, because, you know, sometimes it's just like, hey, somebody might recognize the background. And if that's the case, well, there's not really too much you can do about that, except for just not publishing the video, which I do sometimes. I do sometimes just not publish it until something's happened to it. But yeah, if I do publish the video, then sometimes I just won't include the entrance. I'll start the video once I'm in the building itself. Yeah. Especially if it's a place like a hospital that I won't mention the name of. It's fairly trashed. It's in a city, but I went there when it was untouched, and I knew that very, very soon it would become trashed. I guess same sort of thing with the lifestyle gym that everyone remembers. I knew that was going to be trashed very quickly. So I sort of, those places I tend to leave it. What's this, Tom? It's a live stream of mine, my YouTube channel, obviously. That Bromley Live is just talking about various topics every second week, and this week it's six of everything. No, the building, you mean? Oh, I was talking about a hospital in a city, and then the lifestyle gym, abandoned lifestyle gym in Wheelers Hill that's completely trashed now. Those were what I was talking about. So, yeah, locations, showing the entrances, it depends on the place. Use your best judgment. Ultimately, you're trying to, you don't want anyone to see your video and go trash the place solely because of your video. That's ultimately what you're trying to avoid. JB says, do you think it's better to just blur any giveaways of the location or wait for it to be restored or demolished? It really depends on how much there is to blur, because blurring out stuff takes time, especially with videoing. In the old days of Fogarty Avenue, I used to just keyframe everything, and that just takes ages. For my video that's going to be coming out on Sunday, I will have blurred something. You'll see that I used an auto tracker, and that helped cut down time dramatically, but it still took a while because you sort of have to fine tune it a little bit. Yeah, so it depends on how much there is to blur out and how easily that can be done. Sometimes I'll go, there's too much to blur out. There's stuff that I'll potentially miss, and it's not worth it. I'm just going to wait. Other times it's like, well, I just need to blur that one sign and then I'll be good. So in which case I'll probably just blur that one sign. It's just a matter of sort of playing up on how much time do you want to spend on it. How much time do you want to spend censoring the place? And sometimes I'll even, like, let's say there was a logo with a business name that was sort of in the background that if you looked closely you could see it, but and that would give away the location. Sometimes I will deliberately leave something like that in because it just wasn't worth blurring, and I'm sort of like just playing up with the odds. I guess while I'm on the topic, I'll just mention, if you ever see a video of mine and you think that I haven't blurred something that I really should have, the best thing to do is send me a private message. I would rather you not comment about it on the video itself, because then you're alerting everyone else to the fact. But if you send me a private message, I'll either say, oh, thanks for letting me know that I missed that. I'll take the video down, blur it, then put the video back up. Or sometimes I'll be like, yes, interesting that you noticed that. I actually deliberately didn't blur that, and here are my reasons why. So, yeah. And I've called J Boston out in the past for location bugging in public, because I sort of thought that on a public, like on the comments of his videos, but I haven't specifically said like what he hasn't blurred. I've just said you should have done more to hide this location. And he's been a little bit annoyed with me in the past about doing that, and he's said, look, instead of doing that, can you just send me a message and we can discuss it? And I've gone, yep, all right, fair enough. So in the future, that's what I'll be doing. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so a while back, JB said the name of Bradmill and Niles is literally on Google Maps too. Yeah, yes, and that's another reason why I don't bother censoring the names. let's see what else the comments. Something about something that got burnt. I don't have the time to read through that directly. But, what do I use to edit videos? Videos as a tracker. I use Final Cut Pro. In the Fogarty Avenue days, I used to use Premiere Pro. And I do think that has a tracker, but I never really used it. I don't know if it existed when I was doing videos, but yeah. I believe it was a little bit tricky to use, hence why I didn't really use it. So, but yeah, Final Cut Pro is what I use at the moment, and I much prefer Final Cut Pro. We can talk about that more all the time though. Have you tried to delete location blabbed comments? Yes, absolutely. I have tried. I have deleted comments in the past, and in Fogarty Avenue days, and I need to set this up on my new channel, but in the Fogarty Avenue days, we had like we had certain words set up that would be flagged for review. Like it might be the name of the suburb or something like that, where if somebody made a comment that included that, it'd come up and we could either say no, that comment's not coming out at all to the public, or we could say, okay, yeah, they were just talking about something else and they weren't actually blabbing anything. Yeah, that person's comment can be on. And if you made a comment theoretically that had one of those trigger words, from your perspective, it would look like it went through, but from everyone else's perspective, they wouldn't see it until we approved it. Matthew James says, hi Floyd, what videos are you dropping on Sunday? Hope it's the same hospital as Lukey Mac. The hospital that I was talking about, yes, that was the same hospital as Lukey Mac. I went there with Lukey Mac. So, yeah, that was a really fun place. But, the video I'm releasing is another one in my Queensland by Rail series. You'll see why I've blurred this thing out, but eventually, once my Queensland by Rail series finishes, then I'll get back into urbexing videos, and yeah, the hospital is definitely a contender to be edited. Jesse says, Floyd, I got to ask if it's okay to go in and post a vid. Why not say the location? People watching your vids are interested too. Are you concerned about alerting vandals, or is it more of a finders keepers? It's about vandals. That's the short answer. I'm not. There are some people who have a finders keepers sort of attitude. I don't have that attitude. So, yeah, because I like the history of places, and I appreciate when people have given me locations, so I like to give back where possible, but you do have to weigh up the risk of getting vandalised. And I'll go back to Lifestyle Gym as an example. That was a video that was put out by my friend Jay Boston, where he said exactly where it was, and he shouldn't have. And I went there like, it was a little bit over, I think it was 4 days. I went there 4 days after he'd released his video, and this place had sat untouched for months. And then he released his video, and I was like, that's it. This place is going to get trashed. Get in there. 4 days later, it was already just starting to get trashed, and within a few weeks, it was horrific. And by Christmas time, which was like 2 months, it was completely and utterly destroyed. So that's the great loss of, that's the a story of why you shouldn't location blood, the results of it. Yeah, and I think Jay has learnt a little bit since that video. I hope he has, at least. Redhead says, personally, I'd love to share where something is so more people can see it, but what's the chance? A vandal watches that and now they have a place to tag. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the trade-off. If possible, I will leave in enough signs so that if you really do want to find it, you can get it. You can find it via my video. If you're a friend of mine and I know you and you've earned my trust in some other way, so that I know that A, you're not a vandal, but B, you're not going to accidentally give it out to vandals, or deliberately for that matter, then generally speaking, if you just ask me, I'll be happy to share. But yeah, there are a lot of people in the Urbex world that have a finders keepers attitude, and yeah, they will often want something in return. If you want a place from them, you've got to give them a place in return of similar value. If it's going to be demolished and you aren't responsible for their actions, though, yes, again, I would rather keep it, even if I know it's going to be demolished. And that's the argument of a lot of vandals, is it's going to be demolished anyway. I'd like to keep it as clean as possible up until the point of demolition. And ultimately, like, trashing can be what pushes a place over the line to get demolished. If you're effectively trespassing, hard to claim any ownership or responsibility. Yes, you're right that, it's not you doing it directly. So, does that free you, to what degree does that free you of responsibility? I'm of the opinion that, yes, I wouldn't call you, you're not directly responsible, but you are indirectly responsible. And I'll be annoyed at you if you give out more information than you perhaps should have. If you're given as much money as needed, what would be your number one location to Urbex? Very interesting question. There's not too many places, actually, but I'd say the old military base relatively close to the city. I won't say directly where it is because it is technically abandoned, but I think if you do a bit of searching, you'll find it. I don't want to risk going there because it's an old military base and fines, the risk of fines, etc. But it would be a heck of a cool place to explore. Military bases, I've been to one military base that was abandoned, but it was pretty trashed and nobody really cared about it. And that was okay, but this one is pretty is known for having strict security and that sort of thing. So that would probably be the place, my number one place that I would go to if I had enough money, etc., to get permission. Jesse says, Urbex seems to have more siblings than he really thought. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's not black and white. There's a lot of grey areas, and there's going to be some people who have differing opinions, obviously. I mean, that happens whenever you've got something that's a bit of a grey area. But I've at least outlined my opinions, and I think that the majority of people that I've spoken to generally agree with what I've had to say. Yeah. Melbourne left the ROTS video on that base is so good. Okay. What about country? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. Marlena Nuke Test Zone Group Trip 2020. Oh yes, that would also be a very interesting place. Yeah, there's at least some nuke sites in Australia that you can get to that, yeah, decommissioned or somewhat. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure which ones though. So are you just trying to ask like about country locations? Like, is there a country location that I would love to get permission to go to? An old power station in Gippsland. I have been there once. Now it's got more active security and such, and it's not worth the risk for me wanting to go there, but I'd love to go there again if I had permission. How about that? And it's getting up on an hour and a half, so despite there still being 11 people watching, which is still pretty good, I think I'm going to end it. So if you've got any last minute questions, then ask them now. Otherwise, I'll end it in a minute or two. So yeah, in terms of videos, future videos that are coming, there's going to be Queensland by Rail Part 5 coming out on Sunday, hopefully. I'll try to get Part 6 out for next Sunday. Depends how much source footage there ends up being. It'll probably run to Part 8, and then, yeah. But I'm not exactly sure. I'm sort of playing it as I go and splitting up the parts sort of where it most makes sense to do so. We'll see how many parts there ends up being. Javon says, cheers for the chat, mate. I know I haven't been visible, but here we are. I appreciate anyone coming on. Thanks for the chat. Cheers, Tony. Oh, any country, as in like America, any countries I would want to go to. I mean, yeah, America would be pretty cool to Urbex. Europe, I know that's not a country, but Europe's got some pretty incredible stuff. I guess if I had to pick a single country in Europe, it would be Germany. There's lots of cool stuff. Jesse says, you enjoyed my Queensland Rail vids. Thank you. A few more parts to come. Thanks for the stream, says Albert. Cheers. All right, we'll end it on the 1 hour, 30-minute mark, which is coming up in about 10 seconds. So thanks, everyone, for watching. Glad everyone enjoyed. See ya.